second class. So students, now in this particular session, as I told you earlier also, so this is our second lecture for the May 21, November 21 regular batch for the direct tax for final C students. So students, quickly I'll just regular batch all of you one by one, all those who are already have joined can give your confirmation in this regard. So just a minute students while the students join in. So students, I think we can now take it forward students. Now, as I had also discussed last time as well, students, first I'll just, while the students also will join in, I will also first do a quick recap of the discussion that we had already so far. So first of all students, in the first class that we have discussed, primarily the chargeability was primarily on what? On the total income. So technically speaking here, the charge was on the total income, which as we have discussed can be computed as early as the first day of the relevant AY, and that is the reason why the conclusion was this, that whatever is the law which is enforceable, as on the 1st of the April of the relevant AY, on the basis of that law the tax liability will be determined. On the basis of that particular law, the tax liability would be determined, and the tax liability, as I have discussed, is a function of two factors, and those two factors were, one is the total income and another was the rate of tax. So therefore students, the tax liability, the computation that we all were discussing was in respect of the and this tax liability students, as we were discussing, was something would be computed. So this tax liability computed as per the law, applicable as on the first day of the relevant AY. Now for all of you, I have already have made this reference students. For your attempt, you are for which AY? AY for all of you is 21-22, and accordingly in that context it would be 1st of the April of 21. So whatever is the law which is applicable or enforceable as on the 1st of the April of the relevant AY, on the basis of this particular law students, the tax liability will be computed. And then what we have discussed students, the tax is a function of two factors, isn't it? So the tax happens to be the function of two factors, and that two factor happens to be, one is the total income and another which would be multiplied with the rate of tax. This will be multiplied with the rate of tax. What we have discussed so far, students, was the rate of tax. You have a two source, and that two source were, one was a special rate of tax, the special rate of tax that you had, and another, the special rate of tax, students, this would be, you will be getting, or let's, instead of writing this primary, I'll just write Income Tax Act. So the rate of tax that you all get, IT Act I'm writing, but I'm again warning to all of you, please don't write in the examination IT Act. You have to write the full, the Income Tax Act 1961. I also told you one more point, that you don't have to keep on repeating again and again by writing the Income Tax Act 1961. I have already told you that once you have written, say, section 43B of the Income Tax Act 1961 in your first answer, what I told you in the first class, then in my first lecture, what I told you, then after that you are supposed to write in the bracket, hereinafter referred as an act, hereinafter referred as an act, so that what will happen is that later on you will refer the section, say, 28 of the act. And again I'm warning to all of you, A letter would always be in capital. The letter A would always be in capital. Fine, students? So the Income Tax Act will give you the special rate of income. The special rate of income to be applied on the special income, to be applied on the special income. So here I had given you sort of an example, like the LTCG, like the lottery winnings. So these are the few of the examples that you have, isn't it? So these are the examples on the basis of which these particular special income, on these special income, you will be applying the special rate of tax so as to get or finally determine the special liability. And thereafter on the balance total income, you will be applying the rate as per the Finance Act. And what is the applicable Finance Act for your attempt? We have already mentioned that. That is FA 2020, isn't it? So this, the general rate of tax shall be general rate of tax as applicable to the person shall be applied on the balance total income. This is what you have mentioned so far, students, isn't it? Now, what was the last discussion, students, in the first class? The last discussion that we all had, if you can recall that. In that particular discussion that we all had, very important discussion, students. Now, there is now an alternate scheme of taxation. There is what? An alternate scheme of taxation which would be applied on what? We have already concluded on the balance total income. Now, as per that alternate scheme of taxation, a reduced rate of tax would be applied on the balance total income, and that total income, students, that is to be computed as per this option will be, that total income will be computed without taking into account the major deductions and the major incentives. So one has to forego those major deductions and the major incentives on the basis of which the total income will be computed. And in that total income, if there is any special income, on that special income you will apply the special rate of tax. There is no change on that particular position on the special income, which is included in that total income. That special income, you continue to apply the special rate of tax as per the Income Tax Act, and on the balance total income you will then apply what? The reduced rate of tax as applicable to that alternate scheme of taxation. So So on this particular part, students, we have discussed in our first class that there is an optional scheme of reduce rate of tax to be applied on the balance total income computed as per the scheme. So that total income, as I have just now discussed and told to all of you, you have to forego the deductions. This is what, students, we were there towards the end of our lecture number 1. Fine, students. Any particular doubt that you all have, you can just let me know quickly. I will be happy to resolve on the same. So this is where the entire discussion was there. The optional scheme of reduced rate of tax to be applied on the balance total income computed as per the scheme. Computed as per what? As per the scheme. So again, tax liability, we are, students, all discussing about what? We are all discussing about the tax liability, and this tax liability, students, which will be as per the law which is enforceable, on the first day of the relevant AY. For your attempt, it is 1st April of 2021. On that particular basis, you will have to take into account whatever is the relevant total income and the rate of tax. And this is where we were discussing. Rate of tax is all done now, and now then we will understand the concept of total income. So students, let me then ask you the first question. What is then the total income? What do you understand by the term total income, students? Quickly, all of you. What do you understand by the term total income? Even the G Drive students, whenever I am asking the question, you will also try to get into the processing mode. You will think about the possible solution when I am asking the question. It's not that okay, fair enough, we are not we can take a break. No, whenever the question has been asked, do ensure to answer the same. Primarily, you get your answer processed, and once I give my answer, you can then cross verify. Students, let me know, all of you, give me the answer quickly. What do you mean by the term total income? Total income means what? Quickly. What do you mean by total income, students? Type your answer quickly. So students, majorly all of you are of the opinion that, or maximum students are of the opinion in this regard, that the total income means here is the 5 heads of income. It's nothing but a summation of 5 heads of income is general answer which all the students gives it. What is total income? It's nothing but a summation of the 5 heads of income. Although this primarily is partially true in terms of the understanding, but technically it is an incorrect answer. Why it is an incorrect answer? There is a reason for that, students. The term total income has been defined, and because it has been defined, and this definition, in my first class I told you, students, that we will be doing the definition in the contextual manner, as and when there will be a need of interpreting some very critical term. At that point of time, we are going to take into account the definition clause. And now, therefore, right now, at this point of time, we are going to analyze two very, very important definitions. I already told you, students, it is important now. At this point of time, I am making your entire base, your entire foundation of direct tax. In fact, you yourself will appreciate that what you haven't learnt in your IPCC, in that case, we are doing the entire foundation work, the structuring work. And once the structures are ready, then you can dive in to a particular topic and try to get into its detail. But unless and until that structure is ready, you cannot directly dive into the topic. Be very clear as to the approach on the basis of which you need to crack this particular paper. So herein, when you talk about the term total income, it has been defined in section 2 clause 45. So this section 2 clause 45 defines the term total income, and the definition is a means part of definition. It means, students. So somebody will ask what it means. Whenever any term means something, whenever any terms means something, it means it's an exhaustive definition. Whenever any term means something, students, then it is nothing but an exhaustive definition, which implies that whatever meaning has been accorded in that particular term, only that meaning will be adopted. You cannot take any other interpretation other than whatever is written in that particular definition. So therefore, what it means. So therefore, students, we will do its thorough analysis. Now what I have done is that it's actually only one sentence. The definition of total income, students, is actually only one sentence. So I'm going to split this particular term total income in the definition of total income into three parts. Again, I'm repeating, it's only one sentence, but I'm splitting it into three parts. So what exactly is the total income as a definition? It means point number one, it means income. Point number two, income. Income which is referred in section 5. And point number 3, and computed in the manner laid down under the Act. So when you all were trying to give me the answer, your answer was majorly on the third point. What you what you people were giving me the answer was mainly the third point. What is this third point? It is a sum like what majorly the students would have thought is that it is nothing but a sum total of 5 heads of income. When I asked you the question, what is total income, what you all would have thought is that it is a sum total of the 5 heads of income. And after some deduction, chapter 6 deduction, and that is how we will get our total income. That is only partially correct, and what you were thinking or what you have answered is only directly the third point. The third one says, and computed in the manner laid down under the Act. But computation in respect of what? Computation in respect of what? Computation in respect of an income, that income which is referred in section 5. That income which is referred in section 5. So it is not about the computation of all the income. It is only about the computation of an amount which can be considered as an income. Computation of an amount which can be considered as an income, and that income should fall within the scope of section 5. Only in respect of that qualifying income, now I can say that it is nothing but a qualifying income. What do you mean by qualifying income? There is an amount which can be considered as an income. That income falls within the scope of section 5. That will give you the amount as a qualifying income. Now that qualifying income in terms of point number 3 shall be computed in the manner laid down under the Act. Shall be computed in the manner laid down under the Act. So in that count, students, just have a look in this context 1 and 2. So income. So let's try to analyze each and every part. of the total income. So in that regard, students, the total income analysis. So you will also take a note in the same way, students, the way I am putting across the things. So it's analysis. So point number 1, as I told you, total income means an income. Now all of you will make an attempt and give me the answer. What do you mean by the term income? As a layman, if I am asking you the question, just as a layman, if I have to ask you this question, what is the question? What do you mean by the term income? So students, what is your answer on that? If as a layman, if I ask you this question, that students, what do you mean by the term income? Please answer me. What is your answer on that? What is income, students? All of you at least will make an attempt. See, students, generally students will say here in the earnings. So it is nothing but what? Like an earning, isn't it? So earning is one thing, but in this regard, students, when you talk about the term income, income means something, an amount which is arising from what? The amount which is arising from a definite source. Income is an amount. Repeat with me. Income is an amount which is arising from a definite source. So if your source is an employment, yes, Padmavati, if the source is the employment, then the salary is the income. If the source is the employment, then the salary is the income. If the source is the house property, then rent is the income. If the source is the business, then the profit is the income. If the source is the investment, then the interest or the dividend is the income. If the source is articleship, then the stipend is the income, isn't it? You can say, but we never thought in our 3 years period that we have earned the income. You never felt that way, that is a different thing. But does it bear, your stipend, does it bear the character of an income? That is a real question. You never felt it that you have earned an income? Nobody is asking that. But does that stipend that you got, does it bears the character of an income? To that the answer is yes. Why? Because it is arising from a source. And what is the source? Articleship is your source. And from that source, this amount is arising. So students, any amount which arises from a source will have two features. And that two features will be, number one, that it will have a bit of certainty and there would be a regularity as well. So certainty of the amount to be received and the regularity in which the amount shall be received, these are the two important features so as to denote any amount as an income. These are the two important features so as to denote any amount as an income. What is that? Certainty of an amount and regularity of the amount. This two feature can be only this two feature will be available only if that amount is arising from a source. And that is the reason why, students, I told you, if their source is your employment, salary is the income. Again, tell me, salary, does it have a certainty and regularity? And the answer is yes. When I speak about the terms from certainty and regularity, it may not necessarily be say monthly. It can be anything. It can be quarterly, it can be yearly, it can be 2 years one time, but at least whatever it be, there has to be some sort of certainty and regularity. If that is the case, then yes, those particular amount can be considered as an income. Now, this, can you tell me one word which is associated with this feature of certainty and regularity? Any amount which has this feature of certainty and regularity, and therefore it is considered as an income. We use a term, particular term, we use it. What is that term? What is the term? Padmavati, Kush. The term is any term, students, and all the G Drive students also think about it. What is that term that we all use for that particular receipt, which has, for that particular income, which has the characteristics of certainty and regularity? And indeed, Kush has given the answer. Indeed, it is what? It is a revenue receipt. It is what? A revenue receipt. So students, it will be referred as what? As a revenue receipt. So income in all general case, in all general sense, means a revenue receipt. Fine, that is the general understanding of the term income. So in a very, like, one word for the term income or two words for the word income, it is revenue receipt. What is revenue receipt? It is an amount which is arising from a definite source, so that such amount will have the feature of regularity and certainty. Regularity and certainty. And that is what we can refer that amount to be an income. This is what the general understanding of the term income is all about. This is the general understanding of the term income all about. However, students, please be careful now. You also had studied under the head IFOS, isn't it? Under the head IFOS, you have studied that even the lottery winnings are taxable. You have also studied that even the gifts are taxable. So lottery winnings taxable, gift income is also taxable. So these are the income which you have studied, that they are also taxable under these respective heads. So if they are also taxable in the respective head, so again the question arises before all of you about lottery winnings. Does the lottery winnings have those two features, regularity and certainty? Does it have those two features? And the answer is no. Does the lottery winnings, do you get it from a definite source? Does it have a definite source from which it arises? Again the answer is no. Does the gift has those two features of regularity or certainty? Again the answer is no. Does gift arises from a definite source? And the answer is no. So therefore they cannot be considered as a revenue receipt. In fact, once there is an absence of those two important ingredients which renders the amount to be considered as a revenue receipt, that particular amount or that particular income that particular amount will be considered as a capital receipt. And if that particular amount is considered as a capital receipt, will a capital receipt be considered as an income? Can a capital receipt be considered as an income? To that the answer is no. Capital receipt cannot be considered as an income. Why? Because it lacks those two important features, or I can say that way also, that it is not arising from a definite source, and therefore it cannot be considered as an income. But at the same point of time, you will say, even though it is not considered as an income, but we have seen under the head IFOS, it was already taxable. So how that was being made possible, students? How that was being made possible? The answer is this. The answer is the definition of income, the term income. Students, now income has been defined. Yes, it is defined. Defined under section 2 clause 24. The term income, students, has been defined under section 2 clause 24, and that definition, students, is in inclusive manner. That definition is in inclusive manner. Yes, Harish, you are correct. Is it in the inclusive manner? Section 2 clause 24. Now what? So therefore the definition under the income tax law, we have not been given as to what you mean by the term income. That's the beauty of the income tax law. We are reading a most important legislation, and that legislation is the Income Tax Act. And in that Income Tax Act, we are not being told as to what you mean by the term income. The term income has not been defined. Means they have not given us the real meaning. whatever students, the way we have just now we discussed that income is an amount which arises from a definite source, that is something, is a general understanding of the term income. That is a general understanding. But this general understanding which we have discussed, that is not written in the law primarily. In fact, what is written in the law in the form of the definition under section 2 clause 24 is income includes the following. So what is income has not been defined, but what is included in the term income, that is what they have highlighted upon under section 2 clause 24. And now I think you would have got hold by now that what they have defined in the term income, and that too in an inclusive manner, they have defined the specified, not all of them, but the specified capital receipts. Why they have to define in the term income specified capital receipt? Why is it that they have to define in the term income specified capital receipt? So the need has arisen to define in the term income specified capital receipt, because otherwise the government cannot tax these specified capital receipts. Why they cannot tax these specified capital receipts? Because they are not an income. Why they cannot generally be considered as an income? They cannot generally be considered as an income because they are not arising from a definite source, and hence they lack the feature of regularity and the certainty. And because of that reason, this specified capital receipt cannot be considered as an income. However, you would have realized one thing, students. What is that realization that you would have by now? The realization, students, that you may have by now is that up till now you would have noticed, from the moment you started with your income tax journey, whenever you have regained in your senses as far as the income tax law is concerned, you would have realized that the headline rate of the income tax is 30%. Everyone would have realized this particular proposition, that the headline rate is 30%, isn't it? Now the headline rate, students, is 30%, isn't it? Now what they have done, students, you would have also appreciated this particular part. What they would have done in this context is this is the base. This is known as what, students? This is a tax base. This is my tax base. Now up till now, in the tax base there was only the revenue receipts. Okay, tax base, it was only the revenue receipt. What is the revenue receipt? The amount which arises from a definite source, having the feature of regularity and certainty. So in your tax base, up till now what you had was the revenue receipt. But just understand one thing, tax rate up till now remaining constant at 30%, budget has been increasing year after year. So if the rate remains constant and the budget every year is increasing manifold, then what should then increase? If the rate is remaining constant, then and the budget has to increase, then what should also increase consequentially is your tax base. What should also increase consequentially is your tax base. And therefore, students, you will find over here in this context that what they have done in this situation, they have included in this particular tax base specified capital receipt. And how they have done that? They understood that generally the specified capital receipt is not an income. The specified capital receipt is not an income. So they took the recourse of legislative recourse of definition of income under section 2 clause 24. The definition of income, students, under section 2 clause 24, and through this definition of income, as I told you, which is defined in an inclusive manner, so it includes what? The specified capital receipt. It includes what, students? It includes the specified capital receipt. This is exactly what they have done. So the tax base has been increased. So please understand, just think logically. you'll get hold with the entire funda. A salaried person, say for example, person who is earning a salary of 10,000, 15,000 per month. Okay, now he purchases a lottery and he gets a lottery winning of say 1 crore. Or say a person participate in the quiz show, and in that quiz show he gets a 3 crore of he wins the quiz show and he wins a prize of 3 crores. Just imagine, he 3 crores primarily on that 30% and then surcharge and everything. You can just imagine the total tax roughly would be somewhere approximately around 1 crore. Just imagine this. This person throughout his life will not be paying aggregate of all the tax that he will otherwise pay throughout the life, will not even touch 1 crore, which will be realized only in one particular winnings that he has made in his life, which is either the lottery or the quiz games and all. In that particular quiz show, in one event of his life, he will be paying that much of the tax, which otherwise in aggregate for the rest of his life he will not be even paying that much of the amount of the taxes. Government understand this concept, and that is the reason why it tries to extract as much as possible the taxes on the capital receipt, but not all of them, students. Only that capital receipt which has been defined as an income, only that capital receipt which has been defined as an income. So what is the other example which I have given you for the other capital receipt which is also defined as an income? Then the other example was gift. Similarly, so what we will do, students, we will have to be very, very careful when we do this entire heads of income and all. We should be very careful in identifying that are we taxing a capital receipt in a particular head, and if we are taxing a capital receipt in a particular head, then definitely you should take a pause and think, what is the legislative process? What is the legislative process to tax a capital receipt under the Act? So the legislative process is step number 1. What is step number 1? First, you need to define that capital receipt as an income under section 2 clause 24. Once it has been defined as an income, then you go to step number 2, and your step number 2 then would be to allocate that income in a particular heads of income. The two examples which I have given it to you, that two example is allocated or classified in which head? Under the head IFOS. Let me give you one more example, very popular example, and that, students, is under the head PGBP. Under the head PGBP, students, there is a receipt which I think you may be aware in your IPCC. There is one receipt known as non-compete receipts. So through the non-compete agreements, primarily you will earn the receipts. Now what happens, students, in that context is that through the non-compete agreements, like one very popular example which I keep on telling is the Ambani brothers, Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani. When these two brothers have separated, at that time Mukesh Ambani paid roughly around 5,000 crore in cash to Anil Ambani. What was the reason for making a payment of 5,000 crores? The reason was that Mukesh Ambani didn't wanted Anil Ambani to enter into the petroleum business for a period of next 5 years, because he understood that my own brother knows all the trade secret so far as the petroleum business is concerned, and he will be my biggest competitor once he separates from me. So he will become my biggest competitor, and therefore in order to ensure that this competition should not exist post their separation, that he gave him a lump sum payment of 5,000 crore. So as to not to enter into this business. Now you tell me, students, does this amount, can it be categorized as a capital receipt? Can we therefore say this particular lump sum amount that has been paid by Mukesh Ambani to his brother Anil Ambani, can that be considered as a capital receipt? To that the answer is yes. Why? You will not have regularity and certainty, the features which is otherwise found in any income. So that lacks those two critical features, and therefore being a capital receipt, it is not otherwise as an income. Being a capital receipt, it is not otherwise considered as an income. But obviously the government understands the implication of these lump sum payment on paid for these non-compete agreement. At one stroke 5,000 crores are getting paid. So the government would have an eye on these kind of a transaction, and just the government would have thought 30% only if I charge on these transaction, our purpose will get served. Just imagine, in that transaction 30% will come up to 1,500 crores. And that is the reason why what the government would have done, students, what the government would have done, they would have defined the term income. They would have defined the term income to include what? Even this amount which is received on account of non-compete agreement. Even that will be defined as an income. Once, as I told you, once it has been defined as an income, what is the next step? What is the next step after this? The next legislative step after this is to allocate or classify this particular defined income in a particular head. And which head in which this particular non-compete agreement amount received is been taxed? Which is that particular head? You guessed it right. It is the head PGBP. It is that particular head which is PGBP. So there, this particular amount is being taxed. So students, be careful understanding this critical aspect. Now, one important examination note, students, I wanted to share with all of you. One very important examination note. What exactly is that note? Students, just pay attention. Students, what happens is that when you in the examination primarily, what will happen would be that you have to be careful on one particular point in this context. See, like gift tax. Gift tax, students, is also a very popular question in the CA final examination as well. Apart from your IPCC and intermediate, where it was an important question, even for final CA, gift tax happens to be a very important question. So everyone will write the respective provision of the gift tax of section 56. Section 56, whatever is the applicable provision, they will write. You will also write the same thing. But my only submission to all of you is that you will also write point number 1. Point number 1, students, you are going to first take that into account. What is this point number 1? You will say that gift is defined as an income under section 2 clause 24 and it is chargeable under the head IFOS. And it is chargeable under the head IFOS. So what I only want in your answer, which I can assure you will be distinguished from all the answers across. So what is required, students, in your answer is that you will highlight upon this particular aspect as far as the gift is concerned, that look, it is defined as an income and in which head it is chargeable, under the head IFOS. Please make this reference, and you will keep on making the reference in this particular manner for all the capital receipt which you know which is chargeable to tax under the Act, which obviously as and when we will do each and every topic, at that point of time you will easily will come to know, okay, this is the capital receipt tax under the head PGBP or IFOS, so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind, students, because presentation of the answer is what you have to focus upon. If that is what you are done with it, students, then please quickly you will all take a note herein in your notes segment. Let's start on our notes. I'll give you a brief note on the term income, and after that we shall conclude our discussion. So, but before that, quickly take this note. Income as understood normally is an amount which arises from a definite source. Such amount bears the feature of regularity and certainty. Such amount bears the feature of regularity and certainty. That is, it is a revenue receipt. It is a revenue receipt. Next para. A capital receipt receipts which does not arises from a definite source cannot be considered as an income. Cannot be considered as an income. Students, please use the another color pen to the next statement which I am going to write it now. However, in order to expand the tax base, comma, specified capital receipts are defined specified capital receipts are defined as an income. Specified capital receipts are defined as an income. And accordingly charge to tax. In the bracket, friends, you can write the example, the IPCC example which you all are aware. Only that. Say lottery winnings, gifts, etc. These are the IPCC examples, students, which you all are aware of. Fine. Now, one last sentence, students, that you will write in this context. Very important sentence, students. Another color pen, please use that. Therefore, all revenue receipts are taxable unless they are specifically exempt, whereas capital receipts are not taxable unless they are specifically charged to tax. And how they are, students, specifically charged to tax? How a capital receipt is specifically charged to tax? Now you all are aware of the legislative process. So how they are specifically charged to tax? There are two steps involved. One is first is defined as an income under section 2 clause 24. That is the step number 1. And what is the second step? Second step is that they will then allocate or classify such specified capital receipt in a particular heads of income. Such specified capital receipt in a particular heads of income, students. This is exactly what these people are going to do. Did you all got this one? So this is how it has to be considered, students. In this context, I hope that all of you now have got hold with the term income. Henceforth, students, our discussion so far as income. Now when I am going to revise in my next class, what I am going to say, what do you mean by term income? The term income, students, would now be referred as what? Revenue receipt plus what? Plus specified capital receipt. Revenue receipt plus the specified capital receipt. This is how I am now going to address the term income. Did you all got this one? So this is how we are going to do a quick revision of the term income. Now comes, students, our next particular point, and what is that? That income which is referred in section number 5. By the way, students, what is this section 5? Can anyone address to me quickly? I am asking to all of you students, quickly give me the answer. What do you mean by the term? What is section 5? Section 5, you should be in a position to. Section 4, we have already considered charging section, isn't it? What is there for this particular section 5? There you are. The section 5 is nothing but the scope of the total income which is chargeable to tax. Yes, Harish, it is the scope of the total income which is chargeable to tax under the Act. It is what? The scope of the total income which is chargeable to tax under the Act. Now please understand, students, one thing. Now, although I will say and I'll admit before all of you, I am taking a big gamble. In my second lecture only, I now am going to try for putting one concept before all of you, which is actually a hardcore concept of an international taxation. That is something that we will discuss in length and in breadth while we discuss the international taxation and non-resident taxation. But still, I will make a try so that whatever at least you would have captured, even if its essence you have captured in the second class, it will be really worth an effort then, if you have captured the essence of my discussion. So let me give a try, students. Students, one thing you should be careful about it. Always, any taxation law, for the purpose of the chargeability, looks upon to a territorial nexus for the purpose of creating the charge of tax. Which phrase I have used the term? What is the phrase which I have used? The territorial nexus is a phrase which I have used it. A taxation law for the purpose of creating or attracting the charge will require a territorial nexus. Now, what is this territorial nexus as a phrase? Please, I'm making an effort, students. So just try to capture the essence. Rest of the things we will again try to capture and discuss while we do non-resident taxation. Students, if you see even the indirect tax law, this much of the discussion in the IDT law, indirect tax law, you all are aware that indirect tax law or GST, at least you have heard this particular phrase, that it is a destination based consumption tax. It is what? It is a destination based consumption tax. So being a destination based consumption tax, what it says is that where it is consumed, that territory will have the authority or the right to charge or levy the tax. Where the goods or the services are consumed, that territory will have the authority or the right to tax that particular goods or services. So a nexus is required between the goods, the consumption of the goods and or the services with the territory. It is for this reason, students, I think you may be also aware of this point, that whenever I am exporting the goods and the services, when I export the goods and services, students, on the export, you may be aware, at least I am making an assumption that you may be aware that in GST or IDT there is no tax which has been charged whenever you do an export. Why is it that there is no tax which is charged when you do an export of the goods or an export of the service? The reason I have just now explained to all of you. IDT, as I told you, is nothing but the destination based consumption tax. So if the goods or the service, because it is exported out of India, it is not consumed in India, and since it is not consumed in India, India will not have the authority to tax on such supply of goods or services, and therefore there is no tax on the export. This is what IDT, the philosophy, that there is no nexus, the territorial nexus is not there. So the act or India does not have the territorial nexus to tax the GST on the goods or the services which are exported out of India. There is no territorial nexus. Why? Because the consumption of these goods or the services have not been taken place in India. Let's come on the income tax perspective. In income tax perspective, students, what is that? Income tax being an element of a direct tax, which is nothing but a personal tax, a tax on the total income of the person. What is required in income tax law as is to determine who is the person who has earned the income. Direct tax being a personal tax. Direct tax being a personal tax. Why is a personal tax? It's a tax on the total income of a person. It's a tax on the total income of a person. Therefore, what is critical to identify is who is the person who has earned the income. And that is the reason why, if you find section 5, students, section 5, which defines the scope of the total income, the scope of the total income which is chargeable under the Act. The scope of the total income which is chargeable under the Act. This scope, students, is based upon what? Whether the person is a resident or that person can be considered as a non-resident. So who is the person who has earned the income? Because on this basis that the territorial nexus is sought to be established. On this particular basis that the territorial nexus is sought to be established. So whereas if a person is a resident in India, then what they say, whereas the person is a resident in India, they say that the global income is taxable under the Act. Why for a resident that the global income is taxable under the Act? Think normally, think logically. A resident of India, he is consuming the resource of the country. So whether the government has a territorial nexus with that person itself. When I say, students, nexus means relationship. Does the does India has a territorial nexus with that person itself? And the answer is yes. Why? Because I, being a resident, I am consuming the resources of this country. And because I am consuming the resources of this country, now wherever I am earning the income, whether it is in Indian soil or it is in foreign soil, the global income will be charged to tax under the act, because India has the territorial nexus directly with that person, that is the resident. So if I am taking, students, like a online lecture, now I am putting an online lecture in India. Some of my lectures, online lectures, I am doing from my studio in Mumbai. From my studio in Mumbai, if I am also giving the lecture outside India, so what will be the case? Whether the government has the nexus to tax this income as well? And the answer is yes. Why? I am a resident consuming the resource. You'll say, sir, what resources you are consuming? Everything. Primarily the light, everything, all the resource, manpower, anything, whatever is emanating from this soil, emanating from this land, every resources I am consuming. So in that very case, wherever I earn the income, be it in this soil or in the foreign soil, the nexus is there so far as the government of India is concerned to charge an income tax on my global income. The nexus is there so far as the government of India is concerned to charge an income tax on my global income. So the territorial nexus, students, the territorial nexus is with the person itself. The territorial nexus is with whom? With the person itself, the resident. And what if I happen to be a non-resident? So does the act, or does the India, does the act has a territorial nexus if I happen to be a non-resident? And the answer is no. With the person, the act or India does not have any nexus. Why? Because I am a non-resident. So if I am a non-resident, then in that particular case, the act will have no nexus at all. The act will have no nexus at all. With whom? With me. So therefore, unless and until, now please pay attention to this sentence, unless and until I myself establishes that connection, unless and until I myself establishes what? That connection or that nexus with India, the income cannot be charged to tax under the act. So how I will establish the connection with India? I may establish the connection with India either by having a source of my income situated in India. So if I am having a source for my income which is situated in India, then in that case, can I say that income primarily has the connection with India? And the answer is yes. Since the income has the connection with India, accordingly the scope of chargeability under the act for a non-resident will be extended to what category of income? The category of income is the income which is accrued or deemed to have accrued or rise in India, or the income which is received in India. So students, here as far as the non-resident is concerned, please pay attention and be very careful herein. For a non-resident, primarily, as I told you, there is no territorial nexus with the person. There is no territorial nexus with the person. So unless and until that nexus is established, there is no chargeability. And how the nexus is established? I may have, as a non-resident, I may have some of my source situated in India from which the income is derived. So therefore I can say that the income accrues in India. Or there can also be a situation where although my source is outside India, but I am receiving my income in Indian soil. So in that case also, when I am receiving the income in the Indian soil, I am establishing the connection with India. And if I, being a non-resident, if I am establishing the connection with India, then that particular income is that particular income will form the part of the taxability under the act, will form part of the taxability, will form part of the scope of the chargeability under the act. So two categories of the income primarily, and the two categories of the income are here: income deemed to accrue or arise in India, and the second category, students, was income which is received in India. So in respect of these two income, in respect of what? These two income, students, there is a territorial nexus. And so far as the resident is concerned, so here primarily I'll say territorial nexus. See the difference yourself. Vis-a-vis the resident, in relation to a resident, the nexus is with the person, and because the nexus is directly with the person, global income is taxed. Vis-a-vis a non-resident, vis-a-vis a non-resident, there is no nexus or a connection with that non-resident unless the non-resident himself establishes the connection. How he has established the connection with India? He has established the connection with India by having an income which either accrues or deemed to have accrued or rise in India, or he has his income which is received in India. In both the two cases, we can say that there is a territorial nexus which is established in respect of these income, and accordingly these income of a non-resident would be charged to tax under the act. This exactly, students, what you mean by the term the scope. So please understand one thing, the distinction between the direct tax and the indirect tax law. What I told you about the IDT law, students, was the territorial nexus in IDT. Please pay attention. The territorial nexus in IDT is established on the basis of where the goods or the services are consumed. On that basis, the nexus has been established. Whereas the territorial nexus, so far as the DT is concerned, is established on the basis of who has earned the income. On that basis, we will then try to establish the territorial nexus or the scope of the chargeability. This exactly is what is the concept of the chargeability that you have to understand very thoroughly. Please pay attention. In your IPCC, students, have referred residential status for the IDT law? Did you have referred residential status in the IDT law in your IPCC? And the answer is no. The reason is clear. The territorial nexus is established not on the basis of the residential status of the person. It is established on the basis of where the goods or services are consumed. On that basis, who has consumed the goods and services? Who has consumed the goods and services is an incidental or irrelevant consideration as far as IDT was concerned. Who has earned is irrelevant. Who has consumed the goods or services is irrelevant consideration. Where it was consumed, that was the relevant consideration on the basis of which the chargeability was determined. So far as the direct tax is concerned, it is who has earned the income. On that basis, the territorial nexus or the scope of the chargeability is sought to be established. So it is who which is critical so far as the direct tax law is concerned, whereas it is where which is critical in the context of IDT law is concerned. So it's a game of who versus the game of where. This is how you should try to always recollect the things. Where is a key feature to decide the territorial nexus under the IDT law, and it is the who which is a critical feature to decide the territorial nexus in the direct tax law. And on that basis, you will freeze the scope of chargeability under the Act. Did you all got this one, students? So there was an attempt which I have made it to decode this concept. Although in a limited manner, I have sought to decode it, this particular concept of the territorial nexus, which is very, very critical. Later on, while we will discuss the NR taxation, non-resident taxation at that particular point of time, we will discuss this in length and in breadth. But I hope that whatever discussion which I have done so far with all of you, you have captured the essence, which is most critical part at this point of time. And that is what it is. So if you say that yes sir, we have got hold with it, this will give me also the strength to introduce the technical discussions as well, which otherwise, students, I'm telling you, even this phrase territorial nexus, people are not even using it in the topic of non-resident taxation. You go to that judgment of the Supreme Court in Vodafone case, the entire focus of that judgment of the Supreme Court in that Vodafone 2012 Supreme Court judgment was on what? On the concept of the territorial nexus. Whether this income does that income has a territorial nexus under the Act. And because there was no such nexus which is getting established, finally the Supreme Court went on to conclude that this particular income will not be charged to tax under the Act. It was on that concept of the territorial nexus of that income with India, on that this entire 12,000 crore of tax dispute was based on this very fundamental concept of the territorial nexus. That judgment of that Supreme Court in that Vodafone's case. So that those discussion, students, we will reserve it now for NR taxation. I hope that you have got hold with the essence of the discussion which I had it with you just now. So students, herein, now please understand in that regard. So income, which is what? Which is referred in section 5. Now as I told you, students, this will give you what? This will give you the qualified income. This will give you what? So after the filtration of 1 and 2, after what, students? Yes, Harish. So hopefully yes, the students have got hold with this. So good to know about that. So after the filtration of 1 and 2, students, what you are going to get after the filtration of 1 and 2? What you are going to get is the qualified income. What, students, you are going to get would be the qualified income. And it is this qualified income that you are supposed to compute. Where? In the manner laid down under the Act. So when I asked you originally, what do you mean by total income? What was going in your mind, students, was the 5 heads of income. That is point number 3. But you are doing the computation of what? That is very critical. How to do the computation? That is secondary point. How to do the computation is a secondary point. But computation in respect of what? That is the critical point. So the first step is always computation in respect of what. So therefore the computation is to be in respect of the qualified income. How the computation will be done? This is your secondary part, the second stage, and that is what we will be looking at, and going forward we are going to discuss this point. Arun, Padmavati, they are also said that sir, we can go ahead. So hopefully all of you have got hold with this particular point. So very pleased to know this part, that the technical discussion, students, you have got hold with this. Students, please pay attention. When you used to write in your IPCC, students, the total income question, when you used to do the computation like this, the computation used to be there. So computation of total income. So how we used to write in our answer, students, computation of total income, it was like this, that like for Mr. Patel. Okay, so we used to write previous year. Now previous year, say here in 2020, 2021. and assessment year, say 2021-22. Now, the point was that, students, this Mr. Patel happened to be a resident and audit resident. This is what was very critical. Why? Because this, when you do it, you make the format like this. If you remember, particulars, amount, and finally one more amount. So there are two amounts which is to put across. So students, being a RNOR, being a resident and audit resident, whatever you will put it in the particulars column, whatever you are going to put it in the particulars column would be that income. Because here what you are computing, students, you are computing the total income. So it is your step number 3. When you are doing the computation of total income, students, it is of step number 3. But computation of what? Computation of the qualified income. That qualified income is based on the residential status of a person. So whereas a person happens to be a resident and audit resident, then its global income is charged to tax. So then we were not that much concerned where Mr. Patel is earning his income. We were not that much concerned in your IPCC. But in final CA, students, you will get the question of a non-resident taxation. And when you get a question of non-resident taxation and you have to compute the total income, please be careful. You should know that you are in step number 3. And being in step number 3, you should also know that in step number 3, you will do the computation only in respect of the qualified income. You will do the computation only in respect of the qualified income. So therefore, in that case, if you have a data in the question which says that this non-resident has got some income which is accrued outside India and it is also received outside India, this particular non-resident has got certain income which is accrued outside India and he has got an income which is also received outside India. So there are some students who show this income which is accrued outside India, whichever is income which is given, they will say whatever is say 10 lakh amount, and then they will say less exempt or not taxable. Okay, so in the order column they will take nil. In the outer column, students, they are going to take it as nil. So the effect would be nothing of this particular amount as far as the total income is concerned. But is this presentation a correct presentation? And the answer is no. This presentation is an incorrect presentation, students. Be careful. Final answer, it is the same, because in the total income that effect is not being delivered. Why it is not delivered? Because in the inner column only you have written exempt. First of all, it is not exempt. It is not exempt. It is not chargeable. It does not form part of an income which is chargeable to tax under the Act. And if it is not chargeable, where is the question of computation then? So necessarily, when you are talking about computation of total income, it is in respect of that income which forms part of the scope. It is in respect of that income which forms part of the scope under section 5. And therefore, unless and until the chargeability is established, the process of computation will not be materialized. The process of computation will never be materialized. And hence, you will not be showing this particular income which is accrued outside India and also which is received outside India. Please don't show it in your computation of total income. You will show it in your note segment. This is an incorrect approach. And where it has to be shown? In the note. In the note side, you will say that this is one of the element of an income of this Mr. Patel, who is a non-resident, which is accrued to him outside India, and it is also received to him outside India, and hence it is not chargeable under the Act. And since it is not chargeable to tax under the Act, the question of computation will not arise. So one thing again, and I'm repeating this point, students, because this is where I'm telling you why the direct tax becomes a very difficult paper, because of this assumptions and the presumptions that the students in fact keep on doing it right from their process of their learning. So that assumption and presumption becomes a monster after a point of time. In a way, then the fear started building in. And the best part is that student does not know where they are actually going wrong, and they face it on the day of the examination itself. when they look into the paper, throughout their preparation, students are under an assumption that what they are reading it, they are understanding it, everything is going fair. But the moment they see the examination paper, that's where they are crumbling in terms of the application. Why they are not in a position to apply, or even though what they do is that they smartly compare with the final answer. Total income. Total income, those students who have given it in the note versus those students who have given this presentation, their total income is the same. Where is the difference? No. But is it technically a correct presentation? And the answer is no. Again, I'm repeating, when you talk about the computation, it is only about what? It is only about the qualifying amount. That is an amount which is chargeable under the Act. And what do you mean by the concept of chargeability? Chargeability means the amount has to satisfy the twin test. What is the twin test? The first test was that the amount should be in the nature of an income. That amount should be in the nature of an income. That is test number 1. What do you mean by the term income? It is the revenue receipt or the specified capital receipt. Not only that, that amount also should fall within the scope of section 5, which talks about the scope of the total income which is chargeable to tax under the Act, which is determined based on the residential status of the person. Only then we say this qualifying amount. What do you mean by this qualifying amount? Qualifying amount or qualifying income means an income which is chargeable to tax under the Act, and only in respect of this income that you will proceed to the next step. And what are the next steps, students? The computation in the manner laid down under the Act. The computation in the manner laid down under the Act. I hope that all of you have got hold with this particular point, students, because from our next class, primary, which is the third point, this is where we will start on the concept of the computation. We'll then start with the process of the computation in the manner laid down under the Act. But up till now, you should be settled that what we are computing is the qualified income. So the computation process is in respect of the qualified income. And what you have learned today is what you mean by the term qualified income. That the income which is chargeable to tax under the Act. So that is what is the critical learning, students, or the takeaway from the today's class. I have already told you, and I'm repeating this thing again and again. Please ensure that you will keep on revising at least for that 15-20 minutes every day. That is the beauty of a break in between. You will revise it, students. There is no substitute for your self-study. So do that and make yourself relevant for the next class. Next class also, I will quickly recap the things that we have discussed so far, and then we move to our next and the most critical step, the process of computation of the total income under the Act. When we are computing the total income, students, when this total income is computed, the earliest point of time when you can compute the total income happens to be the 1st of the April of the relevant AY. The earliest point of time where you can compute the total income happens to be the 1st April of the relevant AY, and therefore whatever is the law which is enforceable or applicable as on that first day of the relevant AY, on that basis the total income shall be computed. On that basis the total income shall be computed. The law as applicable on the first day of the AY, on that basis the total income for the previous year, for the relevant previous year, shall be computed. And what is total income? As defined under section 2 clause 45, it means what? It means an income which is falling within the scope of section 5 and computed in the manner laid down under the Act. So what we have analyzed so far is the term income. What do you mean by the term income? One is the general understanding, another is the statutory meaning, which is about the specified capital receipt, and thereafter that income should also fall within the scope of the total income under section 5 so as to attract the chargeability under the Act. Once the income is chargeable under the Act, thereafter we proceed further for the process of the computation. So our next class, students, we will now look into the process of the computation. Fine, students, keep revising it. That's my humble request to all of you. Fine. So now next session we are going to have it on Saturday evening time, 6:15. I will I will extend it at 6:30 students, but that 6:30 timing students will be done from next week. When this is any case 4 lecture I have told that we are giving it in the YouTube. Then thereafter, we will be giving it in this context. Yeah, in the secured software medium. Tapish, in fact, for our regular batch books, Tapish, we are not selling our books separately. Tapish, our regular batch books, it's not there. But yes, there is one capsule book which gets released later on, which is published by Bharat Laws. They are the one who are going to publish our capsule books. Regular batch is only for internal circulation, Tapish. So we don't do it external sale of this particular booklet. Any query, students, that you may have, let me know. I think maybe you are not much of query today, I hope. The only concern was on the territorial nexus. At that point of time, you already had given me this thumbs up that this territorial nexus is something that you all have understood it quite well. So students, Mani Shankar, this weekend I will just put it across, so don't worry about this one. I'll put it across by this particular weekend. Okay, so this week I already have slated for 2 lectures for the MTP. One is on Saturday and one would be I will try on Sunday. 2 videos. Initial Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday. So one Saturday and another would be on Sunday, which I'll try to put it across. Saturday I'm slated for one. I'll try for Sunday, but that Sunday I cannot commit. That can be Monday also. So just be flexible. So there are 2 MTP. One Saturday confirmed, and another would be Sunday or Monday. So that 2 is already slated now. Okay. So that is one thing which I'm just letting you all know. Fine, students. See you then in our next lecture, Arun. Thank you. In the next class. Good night.